Hey there, what's going on? The microphone is muted. Alrighty. Hmm. Some fucking IRL streaming, dude. That's right. Um, just was feeling like talking about some shit, and what's best to talk about shit other than IRL, right? One thing I wanted to read in this live stream is this essay by Bertrand Russell. I'm sorry that we're just gonna dive in like that, but give me a moment here. So basically, if you don't know who Bertrand Russell was, he was a philosopher um, from Britain, and he came up with this theory, which was Russell's teapot, and basically started saying that if you believe there's a God in the sky, if you believe there's a heaven, if you believe that he's almighty and everything, then I believe that there's a teapot, a very, very small teapot, that goes in orbit all around the Earth. And not even the most advanced technologically telescopes and whatever, in microscopes or whatever the fuck. I think microscopes are for like very small things. Telescopes are for the bigger things. But not even the most advanced technologically scopes, let's just put it like that, scopes can see it. Now, if you do come argument with me that that's impossible, then I would say exactly the same to you. It's impossible, there's a guy in the sky controlling Earth. And I found out today that he created basically this essay, I believe, for so let me read this a little bit. So the essay is called "Why Am I Not a Christian?" from 1927. Maybe we can like actually have it on screen and everything. Hang on. Go here. Hang on. Do not. There I am. Do not despair. I shall be there. And there we go. All right, cool. There it is. So, Why I Am Not a Christian from 1927 by Bertrand Russell. The lecture that is here reproduced was delivered at the Battersea Town Hall on Sunday, March 6, 1927, under the auspices of the South London branch of the National Secular Society. It is issued in booklet form at the request of many friends. It should be added that the author alone is responsible for the political and other opinions expressed. As your chairman has told you, the subject about which I am going to speak to you tonight is why I am not a Christian. Perhaps it would be as well, first of all, to try to make out what one means by the word Christian. It is used these days in a very loose sense by a great many people. Some people mean no more by it than a person who attempts to live a good life. In that sense, I suppose there would be Christians in all sects and creeds. But I do not think that that is the proper sense of the word. If only because it would imply that all the people who are not Christians, all the Buddhists, Confucians, Mohammedans, or however you spell it, and so on, are not trying to live a good life. I do not mean by a Christian any person who tries to live decently according to his lights. I think that you must have a certain amount of definite belief before you have a right to call yourself a Christian. The word does not have quite such a full-blooded meaning now as it had in the times of St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. In those days, if a man said that he was a Christian, it was known what he meant. You accepted a whole collection of creeds which were set out with great precision, and every single syllable of those creeds you believed with the whole strength of your convictions. So basically what he says here is that, which I agree a lot with, is basically that a Christian is not just some guy or some person who decides, I'm a Christian now. I'm a Christian. I believe in God. And that's it. Or He's basically trying to kind of quantify how much a Christian you can be or you are to be considered as like a proper Christian. Um, because nowadays do you believe in God? Yeah. Oh, you're a Christian. Cool, bruh. That's neat. But that's not really like that. Anyways, Christianity and a lot of the religions actually have been posing a lot of threats over the decades, centuries even, that we should kind of open our eyes to. Anyways, what is a Christian? Nowadays, it is not quite that. We have to be a little more vague in our meaning of Christianity. I think, however, that there are two different items which are quite essential to anybody calling himself a Christian. The first is one of a dogmatic nature, namely that you must believe in God and immortality. If you do not believe in those two things, I do not think you can properly call yourself a Christian. Now, remember, this is from 1927. This is not from 2017, all right? So, yeah. If you do not believe in us, okay. Then further than that, as the name implies, you must have some kind of belief about Christ. The Mohammedans, I can't spell it. For instance, also believe in God and in immortality, and yet they would not call themselves Christians. Very true, very true. I think you must have at the very lowest the belief that Christ was, if not divine, at least the best and wisest of men. If you are not going to believe that much about Christ, I do not think you have any right to call yourself a Christian. Of course, there is another sense which you find in Whitaker's Almanac and in geography books, where the population of the world is said to be divided into Christians, Mohammedans, is that how I don't find Buddhists, fetish worshippers, really, is that a thing? And so on. And in that sense, we are all Christians. The geography books count us all in. True. But that is a purely geographical sense, which I suppose we can ignore. Therefore, I take it that when I tell you why I am not a Christian, I have to tell you two different things. First, why I do not believe in God and immortality, and secondly, why I do not think that Christ was the best and wisest of men, although I grant him a very high degree of moral goodness. Quite interesting. But for the successful efforts of unbelievers in the past, I could not take so elastic a definition of Christianity as that. As I said before, in olden days it had a much more full-blooded sense. For instance, it concluded the belief in hell. Belief in eternal hellfire was an essential item of Christian belief until pretty recent times. In this country, as you know, it ceased to be an essential item because of a decision of the Privy Council, and from that decision, the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Archbishop of York dissented. There's a lot of words in English that I cannot pronounce properly yet because I have never heard them, all right? But in this country, our religion is settled by act of parliament, and therefore the Privy Council was able to override their graces, and hell was no longer necessary to a Christian. Consequently, I shall not insist that a Christian must believe in hell. The existence of God. To come to this question of the existence of God, it is a large and serious question, and if I were to attempt to deal with it in any adequate manner, I should have to keep you here until kingdom come. So that you'll have to excuse me if I deal with it in a somewhat summary fashion. Also, let me advise you, or not advise you, but disclaim that this is my first time reading that, so sometimes, I stutter a lot. Of course that the Catholic Church has laid it down as a dogma that the existence of God can be proved by the unaided reason. That is a somewhat curious dogma, but it is one of their dogmas. They had to introduce it because at one time the free thinkers adopted the habit of saying that there were such and such arguments which mere reason might urge against the existence of God. But of course they knew as a matter of faith that God did exist. The arguments and the reasons were set out at a great length, and the Catholic Church felt that they must stop it. Therefore they laid it down that the existence of God can be proved by the innate reason, and they had to set up what they considered were arguments to prove it. There are, of course, a number of them, but I shall take only a few. Let's check chat for a little bit. The first cause argument. Perhaps the simplest and easiest to understand is the argument of the first cause. It is maintained that everything we see in this world has a cause, and as you go back in the chain of causes further and further, you must come to a first cause, and to that first cause you give the name of God. That argument, I suppose, does not carry very much weight nowadays because it's not quite what it used to be. The philosophers and the men of science have got going on cause, and it has not anything like the vitality it used to have, but apart from that, you can see that argument that there must be a first cause is one that cannot have any validity. I may say that when I was a young man and was debating these questions very seriously in my mind, I for a long time accepted the argument of the first cause until one day at the age of 18, I read John Stuart Mill's autobiography, and I there found this sentence. Weird phrasing, but my father taught me that the question, who made me, cannot be answered, since it immediately suggests a further question, who made God? That very simple sentence showed me, as I still think, the fallacy in the argument of the first cause. True, dude, true. That's fucking, yeah. If everything must have a cause, then God must have a cause. If there can be anything without a cause, it may just as well be the world as God, so that there cannot be any validity, I hope I'm saying that right, in that argument. It is exactly of the same nature as the Hindus' view that the world rested upon an elephant and the elephant rested upon a tortoise. And when they said, how about the tortoise? The Indians said, suppose we change the subject. The argument is really no better than that. There is no reason why the world could not have come into being without a cause, nor, on the other hand, is there any reason why it should not have always existed. There is no reason to suppose that the world had a beginning at all. The idea that things must have a beginning is really due to the poverty of our imagination. Therefore, perhaps I need not waste any more time upon the argument about the first cause. It's very true, never thought about it. To be honest, I never thought about it, but yeah, you don't need the beginning for everything. That's kind of just like how we see things, right? I mean, that's how we are, to be honest. Like we are born, then we exist, and then we die, and we stop existing. But that's us. That's us. I mean, it is quite the quite the thing to think about, honestly. But these are the things, and why I find this interesting is because these are the things where, people go for like, oh, everything was made by this God, and everything was made by this God because it's easier to explain. It's easier to explain. It's not like something you explain, and give knowledge with it. I'm kind of losing myself in thoughts right now, but I saw this video a couple of years ago, actually, of this professor teaching his stuff in school, and basically, let me go back to full cam while I'm talking, so that I can hopefully. What the fuck, dude? All right, there we go. Cool. So that I can read chat whenever I'm not reading that. Anyways, and this video was basically the professor telling to his class that imagine having a dog and you're about to throw something at the dog, right? Like a rock, not at the dog, but for the dog to catch. And instead of throwing it, you fake like you throw it. And the dog looks at, starts looking at the possible thing that you threw and doesn't see anything. And that shit just blows his fucking mind. It just blows his mind because he doesn't know better. So the dog just looks at it, looks at you like, oh, where the fuck is that? Where did you send that shit? It's not over there. How is that even possible? It's impossible. And yeah, the dog's mind is just blown by that. And it's such a simple thing. We understand it. We understand we just faked it, but the dog doesn't understand. So things like miracles, so-called miracles and shit, it's so much easier for us humans, as complex as we are. It's so much easier for us to, oh, it was a miracle. Oh, it just happened. Oh, it was an act of God. And it's so much easier to say this rather than just try to come up with a logical reason, a logical explanation, And it's kind of like, but why? Why not try to understand things? Why not try to, you know what I mean? Anyways, let's go back to the essay. All right, there we go. So that was the first cause argument, which we just read. Let's read the natural law argument. Then there is a very common argument from natural law. There was a favorite argument all through the 18th century, especially under the influence of Sir Isaac Newton and his cosmogony. Oh, that's it. People observed the planets going around the sun according to the law of gravitation, and they thought that God had given a behest to these planets to move in that particular fashion, and that was why they did so. There was, of course, a convenient and simple explanation that saved them the trouble of looking any further for explanations of the law of gravitation. Excuse me. Nowadays, we explain the law of gravitation in a somewhat complicated fashion that Einstein has introduced. I do not propose to give you a lecture on the law of gravitation as interpreted by Einstein, because that again would take some time. At any rate, you no longer have the sort of natural law that you had in the Newtonian system, where for some reason that nobody could understand, nature behaved in a uniform fashion. We now find that a great many things we thought were natural laws are really human conventions. You know that even in the remotest depths of stellar space there are still 3 feet to a yard. That is no doubt a very remarkable fact, but you would hardly call it a law of nature. And the great many things that have been regarded as laws of nature are of that kind. On the other hand, where you can get down to any knowledge of what atoms can actually do, you'll find they are much less subject to law than people thought, and that the laws at which you arrive at statistical averages of just the sort that would emerge from chance. There is, as we all know, a law that if you throw dice, you will get double sixes only... Double six is only about once in 36 times, and we do not regard that as evidence that the fall of the dice is regulated by design. On the contrary, if the double sixes came every time, we should think that there was design. The laws of nature are of that sort as regards a great many of them. There are statistical averages such as would emerge from the laws of chance, and that makes this whole business of natural law much less impressive than it formerly was. Quite apart from that, which represents the momentary state of science that may change tomorrow, the whole idea that natural laws imply a lawgiver is due to a confusion between natural and human laws. Human laws are behests commanding you to behave a certain way, in which way you may choose to behave, or you may choose not to behave. But natural laws are a description of how things do in fact behave, and being a mere description of what they in fact do, you cannot argue that there must be somebody who told them to do that. Because even supposing that there were... you are then faced with the question, why did God issue just those natural laws and no others? If you say that he did it simply from his own good pleasure and without any reason, you then find that there is something which is not subject to law, and so your train of natural law is interrupted. If you say, as more orthodox theologians do, that in all the laws which God issues, he had a reason for giving those laws rather than others. The reason, of course, being to create the best universe, although you would never think it to look at it. If there was a reason for the laws which God gave, then God himself is subject to law, and therefore you do not get any advantage by introducing God as an intermediary. That's a rough word. Intermediary. Goddamn. You have really a law outside and anterior to the divine edicts, and God does not serve your purpose because he is not the ultimate lawgiver. In short, this whole argument not serve your purpose because he is not the ultimate lawgiver. In short, this whole argument about natural law no longer has anything. Wait, did I just skip something? I did. Wait, did I not? In short. Goddamn, dude. Therefore, you do not get in by introducing God in. You have really a law outside and anterior to the divine edicts, and God does not serve your purpose because he is not the ultimate lawgiver. In short, this whole argument about natural law no longer has anything like the strength that it used to have. I am traveling on in time in my review of the arguments. The arguments that are used for the existence of God change their characters as time goes on. They were at first hard. At first hard? Really? Intellectual arguments embodying certain quite definite fallacies. As we come to modern times, they become less respectable intellectually and more affected by a kind of moralizing vagueness. So, yeah. I don't know about you guys, but I find this shit interesting. Because life is so fucking complex. Why should we just live our entire fucking time, or our entire life? I didn't want it to repeat life, but why should we live our entire lives thinking we were created by some fucking piece of shit that just, you know, doesn't do anything? Like, you are born, you exist, you go through very fucked up shit, like, you know, honestly, to believe in a God in these days, it's so ridiculous if you think about it. All the fucking poverty, all the fucking bullshit happening. If there was an almighty fucking a being, a deity, a fucking divinity, unless this fucking divinity, this deity, this God is just so sadistic that he gets off watching his own creation just fucking suffer like that, which could be a thing. It could absolutely be a thing. Except it is not, because it doesn't exist. But is it not stupid to even believe in this? I mean, like, so many years. It's to blame the power that they have, actually. I would blame the power that they have. Anyways, let's continue to do some reading. Alright. Let me just give it a check. There we go. The argument from design. The next step in this process brings us to the argument from design. You all know the argument from design. Everything in the world made just so that we can manage to live in the world, and if the world was ever so little different, we could not manage to live in it. That is the argument from design. It sometimes takes a rather curious form. For instance, it is argued that rabbits have white tails in order to be easy to shoot. Really? That was a thing back then? I do not know how rabbits would view that application. Yeah, it is an easy argument to parody. Indeed, it is. You all know Voltaire's remark that obviously the nose was designed to be such as to fit spectacles. That sort of parody has turned out not to be nearly so wide of the mark as it might have seemed in the 18th century, because since the time of Darwin, we understand much better why living creatures are adapted to their environment. It is not that their environment was made to be suitable to them, but that they grew to be suitable to it. And that is the basis of adaptation. There is no evidence of design about it. When you come to look into this argument from design, it is the most astonishing thing that people can believe that this world, with all the things that are in it, with all its effects, should be the best that omnipotence and omniscience has been able to produce in millions of years. I really cannot believe it. Do you think that if you were granted omnipotence and omniscience, and millions of years in which to perfect your world, you could produce nothing better than the Ku Klux Klan or the fascists? The fascists? Brain, please allow me to say these words. Fuck. But exactly as I was mentioning before, I mean, if you're almighty, what? Moreover, if you accept the ordinary laws of science, you have to suppose that fucking hell, dude. You have to suppose that human life and life in general on this planet will die out in due course. It is a stage in the decay of the solar system. At a certain stage of decay, you get the sort of conditions of temperature and so forth which are suitable to protoplasm, and there is life for a short time in the life of the whole solar system. You see in the moon the sort of thing to which the Earth is tending, something dead, cold, and lifeless. I am told that that sort of view is depressing, and people will sometimes tell you that if they believe that they would not be able to go on living. Hang on, I think yeah, I fucked up that thing. I am told that that sort of view is depressing, and people will sometimes tell you that if they believe that, they would not be able to go on living. Okay. I think there's a few commas missing in there. Do not believe it. It is all nonsense. I like Bertrand. It's just fucking direct. Do not, yeah, these stupid ass bitches. Nobody really worries much about what is going to happen millions of years hence. Even if they think they are worrying too much about that, they are really deceiving themselves. They are worried about something much more mundane, or it may merely be a bad digestion. But nobody is really seriously rendered unhappy by the thought of something that is going to happen to this world millions of years hence. Therefore, although it is of a course of gloomy view to suppose that life will die out, at least I suppose we may say so, although sometimes when I contemplate the things that people do with their lives, I think it is almost a consolation. It is not such as to render life miserable. It merely makes you turn your attention to other things. Oh, Bertrand, you're fucking hilarious, dude. Or were fucking hilarious. It's but yeah, that's quite something, honestly, you know, because yeah, would it actually be a bad thing for us, or will it be a bad thing? Because you know, it has to end. Like, there has to be an end to it. You know. Anyways, the moral arguments for deity. I've already said this word many times. Why can't I pronounce it right now? Now we reach one stage further in what I shall call the intellectual descent that the theists have made in their argumentations, and we come to what are called the moral... The fuck? What? Why did BattleNet just pop? Anyways, now we reach one stage further in what I shall call the intellectual descent that the theists have made in their argumentations, and we come to what are called the moral arguments for the existence of God. You all know, of course, that there used to be in the old days 3 intellectual arguments for the existence of God, all of which were disposed of by Immanuel Kant, Did I say that right? You cunt. In the critique of pure reason. But no sooner had he disposed of those arguments than he invented a new one, a moral argument, and that quite convinced him. He was like many people. In intellectual matters he was skeptical, but in moral matters he believed implicitly in the maxims that he had imbibed. There are very difficult words in this thing. At his mother's knee. That illustrates what the psychoanalysts so much emphasize, the immensely stronger hold upon us that our very early associations have than those of later times. Kant, as I say, invented a new moral argument for the existence of God, and that in varying forms was extremely popular during the 19th century. It has all sorts of forms. One form is to say that there would be no right or wrong unless God existed. I am not for the moment concerned with whether there is a difference between right or right and wrong, or whether there is not. That is another question. The point I am concerned with is that if you are quite sure there is a difference between right and wrong, you are then in this situation. Is that difference due to God's fiat? Is it fiat? Or is it not? If it is due to God's fiat, then for God himself there is no difference between right and wrong. It is no longer a significant statement to say that God is good. If you are going to say, as theologians do, that God is good, you must then say that right and wrong have some meaning which is independent of God's fiat, because God's fiats are good and not bad independently of the mere fact that he made them. If we're going to say that, you will then have to say that it is not only through God that right and wrong came into being, but that they are in their essence logically interior to God. You could, of course, if you liked, say that there was a superior deity who gave orders to the God who made this world. Or could take up the line that some of the Gnostics took up, a line which I often thought was a very plausible one, that as a matter of fact this world that we know was made by the devil at a moment when God was not looking. There is a good deal to be said for that, and I am not concerned to refute it. Man, Bertrand, what a guy, dude. What a guy. He knows what he's talking about. Time is this? 9:15. All right, let's continue to read. Also, let me just give sort of like a background as to why I'm reading this. Well, for one, I am an atheist. I believe we should go after the knowledge and the truth rather than blindly follow creeds who have no proof of existence whatsoever other than books written by people. And you could argue, well, but you're reading shit others wrote. Yes, but they do make sense. If you think with your mind logically, they make sense. If you go read the Bible and you're reading the Bible and you're going like, doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't make any sense. But you know what's the excuse is? God writes right in I don't know, we kind of say it differently in Portuguese. It's kind of like God writes properly in bent fucking lines or whatever, some shit like that. But is it though? Isn't that just one of those fucking arguments trying to be an excuse for like that shit doesn't make any sense whatsoever? And I'm just trying to sell you this. Buy the Bible. Yeah. Anyways, the reason why I'm reading this is because this is old. This is way before Richard Dawkins. Bertrand Russell is way before Richard Dawkins. So I kind of wanted to give this guy a go. I looked for this kind of stuff, and I was like, you know, I want to give this guy a go before I go into the book and start reading the book properly. But this is the book I'm reading. Let me see if right. So this is the book I'm going to start reading by Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion. And it's a very good book. As about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 people say so. So it is a good book. It is a good book. And I want to read it, I want to get into it, and again, you can argue that, oh, but it's a book written by other people as well, like the Bible. That just, like I just said, it does make sense. It makes sense. It's written by a scientist. It's not written by someone who fucking was high thousands of years ago. Anyways, the argument for the remedying of injustice. Then there is another very curious form of moral argument, which is this. They say that the existence of God is required in order to bring justice into the world. In the part of this universe that we know, there is great injustice, and often the good suffer, and often the wicked prosper, and one hardly knows which of those is the more annoying. But if you are going to have justice in the universe as a whole, you have to suppose a future life to redress the balance of life here on earth. So they say that there must be a God, and there must be heaven and hell in order that in the long run there may be justice. That is a very curious argument. If you looked at the matter from a scientific point of view, you would say, after all, I know only this world. I do not know about the rest of the universe, but so far as one can argue at all, on probabilities, one would say that probably this world is a fair sample. And if there is injustice here, the odds are that there is injustice elsewhere also. Mind blow. Supposing you got a crate of oranges that you opened, and you found all the top layer of oranges bad, you would not argue the underneath ones must be good so as to redress the balance. You would say probably the whole lot is a bad consignment. And that is really what a scientific person would argue about the universe. Sorry, my throat starts to get kind of iffy when I read a lot. He would say, here we find in this world a great deal of injustice, and so far as that goes, that is a reason for supposing that justice does not rule in the world. And therefore, so far as it goes, it affords a moral argument against deity and not in favor of one. Of course, I know that the sort of intellectual arguments that I have been talking to you about are not what really moves people. What really moves people to believe in God is not any intellectual argument at all. Most people believe in God because they have been taught from early infancy to do it, and that is the main reason. Then I think that the next most powerful reason is to wish for safety, a sort of feeling that there is a big brother who will look after you. That plays a very profound part in influencing people's desire for a belief in God. That is so fucking true. That is so fucking true. So, if you allow me to explain a little bit about my whole story with why I became an atheist and why I'm not a Christian anymore, but this is true. And so when I was very young, at the age of 8 years old, or was it even earlier? I think it was even earlier, actually. Or not. I think there's like a minimum... I think there's a minimum age that you have to be before they give you that call and go like, you want to join? What's it called? It's like... Shit, I don't know. I'm gonna try and look for it, but I don't know the fucking word in English. Catechism. Right, catechism. That's the thing. Hopefully that's an actual thing. I'm hoping so. Anyways, I think there's like a minimum age they have to wait for until they can give you the call and, hey, do you want to join catechism? Do you want to come into the church? Blah, 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 blah. You want to follow Christianism? Christianity is so cool, blah, blah, blah. Now, as an infant, this sounds fucking amazing. Sounds fucking amazing. You go into this building with a lot of other people with the same taste as you do, and you start, it's kind of like school, but not really, because it's a little bit more free, kind of. So as an infant, yes, this sounds incredible. It sounds amazing. It sounds like, whoa, let's make activities. Let's have activities. Let's have good times. Let's have make possible friends and shit. And it all sounds like it's an incredible fucking thing, right? So people start following this. People get into this, and they kind of blindly go through it. It's not nearly as much as like a meaningful thing, but it's more like a convenience. Like, well, why not? You know, it's fun, I guess. It's a social experience and stuff. Why not join it? Why not go for it? You know. And just like it says on the essay, and very truthful as well, I would agree that some people keep the thought and keep the belief because it's a sense of security in a way that it's kind of like, you know, it probably feels like you've got it just like it says on the essay. It's like it feels like you have a big brother looking at you, and you know, you're not alone when you're alone, and it's kind of like, you know. But when I was 12 years old, so to give you a little bit of my background and why I'm so passionate about this kind of stuff, and why I'm so passionate about bringing Christianity down is because when I was very young, I was being raised by my grandmother, and I was just doing every single fucking activity I could for the church, for the catechism, all the fucking things. I was doing theater. I did theater for the church, being the narrator. I was always good at reading. If you put me a thing in Portuguese to read, I probably know almost all the fucking words. But obviously, an essay from 1927 in English, which is not my native language, is kind of difficult, especially from 1927. Anyways, but I did theater. I was at the altar at some point in church. I was going to church every single Sunday. You know, and I was reading the Bible with neighbors and shit in the building, and it was just, I was involved as fuck in that shit. So when I say these things, I'm not just talking out of my fucking ass. I know what I'm talking about. I know the power that they have over you whenever whenever the chance comes by, and they're powerful as fuck. They can control you. They will fucking control. They will take your cash, even. You know? So, yeah. But anyways, at the age of 12 years old, I had my grandmother pass on me. And I was like, thinking. So this supposed God that I've been doing all the shit for, doing theater, being in the altar, being fucking giving those things that you give people, or that you take with like the fucking wine and shit. So all of this I've been doing, all that my grandmother has been doing, all the good that she was doing. She was fucking donating clothes, she gave money to the church, all this, all that. And this is the almighty God that exists, taking away literally the person that is raising me to be a good citizen. Because the problem here is that when I was a teenager, then at the age of 12 years old, the only person I had to kind of raise me properly was my grandfather. And my grandfather was a trucker, and he would leave to go to work at around like 7 to 8 a.m. and only return like 12 hours later or something of the likes. Sometimes he would not even return because he had to stay there. My internet's kind of pooping on me. Fucking hell. Wait, it's not. What? Gosh darn Twitch. Anyways, So sometimes he would not even come back home because it was difficult, because he had to stay there to get the load from the next day, because there was already a huge queue of truckers waiting to get their loads on their trucks. Anyways, so I was like, at the age of 12, I'm not crying, by the way. I'm I don't get emotional with this anymore. But anyways, at the age of 12, you're a teenager and you feel lost as fuck. So I started thinking, there's no fucking God. A God would never do this. And then some people would argue, like the fucking hierarchies of catechism and bullshit. They would argue that, no, but God took your grandmother because she's needed in heaven to help with everything. She was such a saint that she's needed in heaven. And I was like, that is the most fucking bullshit argument I've ever heard in my entire life. All right. And I used to watch the news all the fucking time with politics talking and stuff. So that was a load of bullshit. So I started, questioning things. I started being more into the truth and knowledge rather than fucking just blindly follow shit. Like, the fucking eclipse, it's a miracle, it's a God's act for us to be entertained for a couple of years, not years, but a couple of days. It's an act of God for us to buy fucking goggles and look at that shit, No, it's not, dude. It's science. It's the universe. It's the universe talking to us. It's fucking nature, dude. Nature is everything. But that's one of the reasons. I just, I don't know if it's a good story or not, or a boring fucking story, but it's basically just to give a little bit of the background why I chose to be an atheist. Because I've been through fucking Christianity. I've been through that shit. And I've been like really deep down there, deep in there, fucking that I just chose to get out, kind of like a junkie decides to get out of it, maybe not as addictive, but you get the point. Anyways, let's continue to read this. All right, just take a look. There we go. Okay, so did I just read this? I did, right? Yeah. The character of Christ. I now want to say a few words upon a topic which I often think is not quite sufficiently dealt with by rationalists, and that is the question whether Christ was the best and the wisest of men. It is generally taken for granted that we shall all agree that that was so. I do not myself. I think that there are a good many points upon which I agree with Christ a great deal more than the professing Christians do. I do not know that I could go with him all the way, but I could go with him much farther than most professing Christians can. You will remember that he said, "Resist not evil, but whosoever shall smite thee on thy right cheek, turn to him the other also." That is not a new precept or a new principle. It was used by Lao Tzu and Buddha some 500 or 600 years before Christ, but it is not a principle which, as matter-of-fact, Christians accept. I have no doubt that the present Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, was that it? For instance, is a most sincere Christian, but I should not advise any of you to go and smite him on one cheek. I think you might find that he thought this text was intended in a figurative sense. Then there is another point which I consider is excellent. You will remember that Christ said, "Judge not lest ye be judged." That principle I do not think you would find was popular in the law courts of Christian countries. I have known in my time quite a number of judges who were very earnest Christians, and none of them felt that they were acting contrary to Christian principles in what they did. Then Christ says, "Give to him that asketh thee, and from him that would borrow thee turn not thou away. That is a very good principle. Your chairman has reminded you that we are not here to talk politics, but I cannot help observing that the last general election was fought on the question of how desirable it was to turn away from him that would borrow of thee, so that one must assume that the liberals and conservatives of this country are composed of people who do not agree with the teaching of Christ, because they certainly did very empathically turn away on that occasion. Then there is one other maxim of Christ which I think has a great deal in it, but I do not find that it is very popular among some of our Christian friends. He says, if thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast and give to the poor. That is a very excellent maxim, but as I say, it is not much practiced. It is not. It is not. All these, I think, are good maxims, although they are a little difficult to live up to. I do not profess to live up to them myself, but then after all, it is not quite the same thing as for a Christian. That is very fucking true, dude. They keep saying, oh, it's this, it's that, it's that. Do this, be that. We have these commandments or whatever the fuck they call it. And you should follow them and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but do you? Do you follow them? Really? I highly doubt that. Anyways, the facts in Christ's teaching. Excuse me, had a little bit of snot. Having granted the excellence of these maxims, I come to certain points in which I do not believe that one can grant either the superlative fucking hell wisdom of, or the superlative goodness of Christ is depicted in the Gospels. And here I may say that one is not concerned with the historical question. Historically, it is quite doubtful whether Christ has ever existed at all, and if he did, we do not know anything about him, so that I am not concerned with the historical question, which is a very difficult one. I am concerned with Christ as he appears in the Gospels, taking the Gospel narrative as it stands, and there one does find some things that do not seem to be very wise. For one thing, he certainly thought that his second coming would occur in clouds of glory before the death of all the people who were living at that time. I have to barf. Goddamn. There are a great many texts that prove that. He says, for instance, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come. Then he says, there are some standing here which shall not taste death till the Son of Man comes into his kingdom. And there are a lot of places where it is quite clear that he believed that his second coming would happen during the lifetime of many then living. That was the belief of his earlier followers, and it was the basis of a good deal of his moral teaching. When he said, take no thought for the morrow, and things of that sort, it was very largely because he thought that the second coming was going to be very soon, and that all ordinary mundane affairs did not count. I have, as a matter of fact, known some Christians who did believe that the second coming was imminent. I knew a parson who frightened his congregation terribly by telling them that the second coming was very imminent indeed, but they were very much consoled when they found that he was planting trees in his garden. The early Christians did really believe it, and they did abstain from such things as planting trees in their gardens, because they did accept from Christ the belief that the second coming was imminent. In that respect, clearly, he was not so wise as some other people have been, and he was certainly not superlatively wise. Superlative. And it's funny, that's a difficult word for me to say, because that's pretty much like we say it in Portuguese, superlative, right? Superlative. Okay, I think I got it. The moral problem. Then you come to moral questions. There is one very serious defect in my mind in Christ's moral character, and that is that he believed in hell. I do not myself feel that any person who is really profoundly humane can believe in everlasting punishment. Christ certainly has depicted in the Gospels that believe in everlasting punishment, and one does find repeatedly a vindictive fury. I was gonna say furry. Oh gosh, fury against those people who would not listen to his preaching. An attitude which is not uncommon with preachers, but which does somewhat detract from superlative excellence. You do not, for instance, find that attitude in Socrates. You find him quite bland and urbane towards the people who would not listen to him. And it is, to my mind, far more worthy of a sage to take that line than to take the line of indignation. You probably all remember the sort of things that Socrates was saying when he was dying, and the sort of things that he generally did say to people who did not agree with him. You will find that in the Gospels Christ said, "You serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell?" That was said to people who did not like his preaching. It is not really, to my mind, quite the best tone, and there are a great many of these things about hell. There is, of course, the familiar text about the sin against the Holy Ghost. Whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world nor in the world of come. That text has caused an unspeakable amount of misery in the world, for all sorts of people have imagined that they have committed the sin against the Holy Ghost, and thought that it would not be forgiven them either in this world or in the world to come. I really do not think that a person with a proper degree in kindliness in his nature would have put fears and terrors of that sort into the world. I kind of mind, never mind. Then Christ says, "The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth." It's gnashing, I said gnashing. Gnashing of teeth, and he goes on about the wailing and gnashing of teeth. It comes in one verse after another, and it is quite manifest to the reader that there is a certain pleasure in contemplating wailing and gnashing of teeth, or else it would not occur so often. Then you all, of course, remember about the sheep and the goats, how at the second coming to divide the sheep and the goats, he is going to say to the goats, "Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire." He continues, "And these shall go away into everlasting fire." Then he says again, "If thy hand offend thee, cut it off. It is better for thee to enter into life maimed, than having two hands to go into hell, into the fire that never shall be quenched, where the worm dieth not and the fire is not quenched." He repeats that again and again also. I must say that I think all this doctrine, that hellfire is a punishment for sin, is a doctrine of cruelty. It is a doctrine that put cruelty into the world and gave the world generations of cruel torture. And the Christ of the Gospels, if you could take him as his chroniclers represent him, would certainly have to be considered partly responsible for that. There are other things of less importance. There is the instance of the Gadaneer swine, where it certainly was not very kind to the pigs to put the devils into them and make them rush down the hill to the sea. You must remember that he was omnipotent, and he could have made the devils simply go away, but he chooses to send them into the pigs. Then there is the curious story of the fig tree, which always rather puzzled me. You remember what happened about the fig tree. He was hungry, and seeing a fig tree afar off having leaves, he came, if haply he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And Peter saith unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursedst is withered away. This is a very curious story, because it was not the right time of year for figs, and you really could not blame the tree. I cannot myself feel that either in the matter of wisdom or in the matter of virtue Christ stands quite as high as some other people known to history. I think I should put Buddha and Socrates above him in those respects. This is also a thing I was talking about earlier, in terms of it being, in terms of the religion of God, of Christ being sadistic, being mean. And then I wonder how people would follow this. Why would you follow this? That must say something about us humans, obviously. I guess saints aren't really saints, are they? Just fucked up motherfuckers. Anyways, the emotional factor. Just confirm. There we go. As I said before, I do not think that the real reason why people accept religion has anything to do with argumentation. They accept religion on emotional grounds. One is often told that it is a very wrong thing to attack religion because religion makes man virtuous. So I am told. I have not noticed it. You know, of course, the parody of that argument in Samuel Butler's book, Erewhon Revisited. You'll remember that in Erewhon, there is a certain Higgs who arrives in a remote country, and after spending some time there, he escapes from that country in a balloon. 20 years later, he comes back to that country and finds a new religion in which he is worshipped under the name of the Sun Child. And it is said that he ascended into heaven. He finds that the Feast of the Ascension is about to be celebrated, and he hears Professors Hanky and Panky say to each other that they never set eyes on the man Higgs, and they hope they never will. But they are the high priests of the religion of the Sun Child. He is very indignant, and he comes up to them and he says, I am going to expose all this humbug and tell the people of Erewhon that it was only I, the man Higgs, and I went up in the balloon. He was told, you must not do that, because all the morals of this country are bound round this myth, and if they once know that you did not ascend into heaven, they will all become wicked. And so he is persuaded of that, and he goes quietly away. That is the idea, that we should all be wicked if we did not hold to the Christian religion. It seems to me that the people who have held to it have been, for the most part, extremely wicked. You find this curious fact that the more intense has been the religion of any period, and the more profound has been the dogmatic belief, the greater has been the cruelty, and the worse has been the state of affairs. In the so-called ages of faith, when men really did believe the Christian religion in all its completeness, there was the Inquisition, with its tortures, there were millions of unfortunate women burnt as witches, and there was every kind of cruelty practiced upon all sorts of people in the name of religion. You find as you look around the world that every single bit of progress in humane feeling, every improvement in the criminal law, every step towards the diminution of war, every step towards better treatment of the colored races, or every mitigation of slavery, every moral progress that there has been in the world has been consistently opposed by the organized churches of the world. I say quite deliberately that the Christian religion, as organized in its churches, has been and still is the principal enemy of moral progress in the world. Absolutely. Absolutely. How the churches have retarded progress. You may think that I am going too far when I say that is still so. I do not think that I am. Take one fact. You'll bear with me if I mention it. It is not a pleasant fact, but the churches compel one to mention facts that are not pleasant, supposing that in this world that we live in today, an inexperienced girl is married to a syphilitic man. In that case, the Catholic Church says, this is an indissoluble, oh my god, this word's fucked up, sacrament. You must stay together for life, and no steps of any sort must be taken by the woman to prevent herself from giving birth to syphilitic children. So this is like syphilis. Okay. That is what the Catholic Church says. I say that that is fiendish cruelty, and nobody whose natural sympathies have not been warped by dogma, or whose moral nature was not absolutely dead to all sense of suffering, could maintain that it is right and proper that state of things should continue. That is only an example. There are a great many ways in which, at the present moment, the Church, by its insistence upon what it chooses to call morality, inflicts upon all sorts of people undeserved and unnecessary suffering. And of course, as we know, it is in its major part an opponent still of progress and of improvement in all the ways that diminish suffering in the world, because it has chosen to label as morality a certain narrow set of rules of conduct which have nothing to do with human happiness. And when you say that this or that ought to be done because it would make for human happiness, they think that has nothing to do with the matter at all. What has human happiness to do with morals? The object of morals is not to make people happy. True, very true. Bertrand Russell, what a genius. Fear, the foundation of religion. Religion is based, I think, primarily and mainly upon fear. It is partly the terror of the unknown, and partly, as I've said, the wish to feel that you have a kind of elder brother who will stand by you in all your troubles and disputes. Fear is the basis of the whole thing. Fear is the mysterious, fear of defeat, fear of death. Fear is the parent of cruelty, and therefore it is no wonder if cruelty and religion has gone hand in hand. It is because fear is at the basis of those two things. In this world we can now begin a little to understand things, and a little to master them by help of science, which has forced its way step by step against the Christian religion, against the churches, and against the opposition of all the old precepts. Science can help us to get over this craven fear in which mankind has lived for so many generations. Science can teach us, and I think our own hearts can teach us, no longer to look around for imaginary supports, no longer to invent allies in the sky, but rather to look to our own efforts here below to make this world a fit place to live, instead of the sort of place that the churches in all these centuries have made it. What we must do. Sorry. We want to stand upon our own feet and look fair and square at the world. Its good facts, its bad facts, its beauties and its ugliness. See the world as it is, and be not afraid of it. Conquer the world by intelligence and not merely by being slavishly subdued by the terror that comes from it. The whole conception of God is a conception derived from the ancient Oriental despotisms. It is a conception quite unworthy of free men. When you hear people in church debasing themselves and saying that they are miserable sinners and all the rest of it, it seems contemptible and not worthy of self-respecting human beings. We ought to stand up and look the world frankly in the face. We ought to make the best we can of the world, and if it is not so good as we wish, after all, it will still be better than what these others have made of it in all these ages. A good world needs knowledge, kindliness, and courage. It does not need a regretful hankering after the past or a fettering of the free intelligence by the words uttered long ago by ignorant men. It needs a fearless outlook in the free intelligence. It needs hope for the future, not looking back all the time towards a past that is dead, which we trust will be far surpassed by the future that our intelligence can create. Bertrand Russell, Why Am I Not a Christian? Watson Company, I guess. Federationist Press Association Limited, 1927, first published as a pamphlet and reissued many times since that. Very good essay. Very good essay. Again, this has been 1927, which, you know, it's been quite a while. Yeah. And we still have fucking religion around it. But the problem, I believe, is not to stop churches and things. I think it is to make people wake up and open the eyes of the people so that they can see for themselves that it is better to seek the truth and seek knowledge on your own rather than be blinded by the ignorance that the church kind of tries to put upon you. You know what I mean? Because that's the whole thing about the church. And that's the whole thing about being a Christian, is you're blindly following this cult. I guess I can call it a cult, because religion is religion, cult is a cult, is a different thing, whatever the fuck. But it's in the end, it's the same fucking thing. But yeah, I mean, religion is religion, and they just keep trying to make you follow their shit, and just not question things. And everything that happens is because of a miracle. It's because of an act of God. I keep repeating myself about this, but it's the truth. And like it's said in the essay, they keep trying to make us feel, or they keep trying to keep us ignorant, because that's what they want. They don't want us to know about progress. They don't want us to fucking come up with shit. There has been also, like, I don't know, it's kind of like this shit has passed across the world. Like, there's companies nowadays that do that. I remember, like, a couple of years ago, there was people coming up with engines, vehicle engines that could be moved by water somehow. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mechanic, so I cannot figure that out, but there were. And they were showing it off that it was functioning. Yet, where are they? Where are these cars moved by water? What are these engines that can work with water? They probably paid these people a shit ton of money and said, you know what? Listen, dude. Here's a lot of money. It's either this or we fucking kill you or do something to you and you'll never see your family, you'll never this or you'll never that. I 100% believe that companies do this because fuel is such a huge fucking business in the world. Everybody uses a fucking car. Everybody needs a fucking car. Because there's just not enough convenience yet for public transportation. You know what I mean? Unless you live in a very, very populated city, for example, like London. London is insane for you to have a fucking car because it's so many cars. Where are you gonna park? You're gonna be lucky if you find a parking spot, you know? So it's kind of like in other than that, where people use a lot of public transportation and where public transportation is kind of like, I would consider the main choice for transportation in London. Unless it's that, but like still in Lisbon and fucking here in my hometown, there's no fucking public transport. I mean, for the hometown, you don't need transportation because it is a small fucking place. You can walk anywhere. Like, you don't need public transportation. But for example, going to the city that's closest to this is difficult. It's difficult because the times are so fucked up. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And so vehicles become a huge fucking convenience. And anyways, moving on from that conversation, another thing that I know that has been a thing as well for a long ass time, and I'm kind of losing myself in the thought. Fuck, dude, what shit. I was gonna say something, and I lost myself in the fucking train of thought. God damn, dude. God damn. This fucking sucks. um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, we gotta fight this. We kind of have to fight this. We don't need to fight it like let's go out there with swords and guns and shit. I guess nowadays it would be guns, but yeah, we need to fight this. We need to be like saying, you know what? Hey guys, here's reasons why you should not believe in this. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I believe, and I'm not gonna say 100% because I've never had proof of anything from it. But movies and series and shit. But I believe, kind of at 86%, that if the Vatican, the library that is in the Vatican, was to be opened and exposed to the world, what it has in there, I believe we could not only prove that the church has been keeping technology and progress at bay, because I'm 100% that I'm 100% sure that there's stuff there that could have like made us evolve really quickly, way more than we did. And I also believe that there would be a chance of fucking like ending the poverty and fucking ending the hunger and shit. Just sell all that bullshit to fucking billionaires and all of that, and just fucking give food to whoever needs it. You know, I bet there's a lot of billions and billions in there, in that fucking thing, in that little fucking room. I say a little, it's probably like a huge fucking thing, with everything kept inside, super secure and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it has to be, dude. It has to be. The church has always been trying to fucking mitigate what creations and stuff like that, you know, that would somehow be harmful to them. That is absolutely a thing. But anyways, I think I'm gonna end the stream here. How long have I been live? It's just I you know, 1 hour 25 minutes. Okay. It was just kind of a different thing for me. One thing I've been thinking about doing on stream is read books. Maybe start reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. Who knows? Or just continue reading, and you know, maybe then you buy the book for yourself. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I like to talk, and I love that Twitch created this IRL thing where you can just talk about whatever the fuck you want, and you can interact with chat and interact with people, and that's awesome. That's awesome. And I decided to turn on the stream because again, I really wanted to read the Why I'm Not a Christian by Bertrand Russell. And yeah, that was pretty much it. And since it was here on the internet on a page, why not read it on stream and kind of share my experiences, share my opinions, and all of that stuff. So maybe later, because my internet at this time is pretty fucking poopy. It's pretty poopy. Which is one of the reasons why I don't stream that often. Which is one of the reasons why I did not stream the weekend. I'm gonna try and come up with a solution, or just give it a go, playing some video games or trying to play some video games with the internet that I have on weekends. But to be honest, I also got super drunk Friday, and I was hungover as fuck, dude. Not gonna lie, usually I can type like a motherfucking boss. I could not type for the life of me. You know, and yeah, and it was fun. It was a fun stream. I had fun. I love doing these things, which is why I started the radio kind of as well, because I like talking. I fucking love talking, dude. It's awesome. It's awesome. And but the thing for the radio is that you can't really do like, if you want to keep people entertained, I feel like, at least, if you want to keep people actually entertained and watching or listening to you, you have to kind of have a structure and you have to follow this structure rather than just something random talking, like, you know, your experiences. Maybe it is also good to have like random conversations and shit like that, but you know, whatever. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. If you did, if you enjoyed, you know, give the channel on Twitch a follow, twitch.tv/DanMeGrinder. I will appreciate it very much, and I'll see you guys on the next one. All right, next stream probably is gonna be gaming, hopefully, and I'm gonna see whenever I can, or whenever I'm gonna start doing the readings. So if you like books, if you like readings, if you like my voice, if you like anything related to that, just follow the channel, and you know, see whenever that's gonna pop up and whenever that's gonna happen, right? So cheers.